Okay, well, we're very, very fortunate to have Bryon Stevens on today. Bryon, thank you so much for joining us. Really, it was great. It was great connecting with you maybe about a month ago, and I know you travel an awful lot, even during this COVID period. So really appreciate you taking an hour to join us. At Mays Business School, Texas A&M today. Let me introduce Bryon. So, hailing from Logansport, Indiana, Bryon Stevens is the co-founder of Pivotal Growth Partners. His experience in franchising across multiple industries has positioned him as a top player in brand development. Working for A&W Restaurants, Bryon led the development efforts that saw the start and evolution of co-branding, putting two great brands together under one roof. The initiative led to A&W's acquisition of Long John Silver's and Tricon Global Restaurants' subsequent acquisition of Yorkshire Global Restaurants, forming Yum Brands, which probably many of you have heard of. It's the world's largest restaurant company with more than 32,000 restaurants operating in 150 countries around the world. Bryon joined Marco's Pizza in 2004 as Vice President of Development and later Chief Operating Officer. His innovative approach to system-wide expansion led to the company's rapid award-winning growth. After being named president of Marco's Pizza in 2014 on the strategic alignment of operations, marketing, supply chain, finance, information technology, and restaurant development to accomplish bold sales and growth goals while maintaining high benchmarks for product quality and guest satisfaction. Under his leadership, Marco's grew from 139 units to nearly 800 by the end of 2017. Unit profitability increased significantly, and system-wide sales increased to nearly $500 million annually. In 2017, Bryon served as CEO of the Extreme Leadership Institute, which follows the teachings of Extreme Leadership's chairman, Steve Farber, and educated business leaders and teams on how to become extreme leaders and drive radical results. In addition to his C-suite roles, he has worked with a number of entrepreneurs to launch successful startup restaurant concepts as a business consultant, focusing on marketing, branding, growth, and operational systems and execution. And as I said, it's a real honor to have Bryon here today with us. I know you all are going to this is going to be an MBA masterclass, my friends. I want to start off, I talked with Bryon. I want to start off, I think it'd be fun to start off with a little clip from his role on Undercover Boss. So let me go ahead and share the screen. Oops, hold on one second. Sorry. I forgot to do the infamous click of these little two boxes so you can hear it. All right, here we go.
With a base of operations in Toledo, Ohio, and with 20,000 employees spread across 35 states and 4 countries, Marco's Pizza is one of the world's fastest growing pizza chains. Leading this $400 million a year powerhouse is one man.
I'm Bryon Stevens, and I'm president of Marco's Pizza. My history in franchising started with A&W Restaurants. I have the good fortune of being the person who actually started to create that co-branding environment. We took A&W and packaged A&W up with KFC, Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell. It worked so well, we created a groundswell of people interested in doing that. I've been responsible for some very unique ideas in the franchising world, so that's how I ended up here at Marco's. In 2004, I was asked to be the growth partner for the company. My journey to the boardroom wasn't like most people's journey. You know, growing up, we struggled. We had to do things to make ends meet, and I didn't have any formal education. And so I actually started in the dish room at the Holiday Inn in my hometown, and it was my primary job. I would help out the cooks, I work in the bar, I would do just about anything and everything there. And then one day, the owners tapped me on the shoulder and asked me if I'd like to become a manager within their organization. And that opened a new paradigm for me. It started a love affair with both the restaurant industry and with franchising that continues to this day. Marco's was a small regional chain operating in 3 states. And so I came on at that time, and we began getting the chain ready for what we called nationwide expansion. This year, we're going to open over 130 restaurants. Next year, 150 restaurants. And over the course of the next 5 years, we'll open somewhere in the neighborhood of 750 new restaurants. In 5 years, we expect to have over 1,500 restaurants, and we'll be operating in more than 5 countries.
Excellent. You know, Bryon, it's second time I've watched that video, second time I've got goosebumps, man. That's just such a cool story. I love your story, Bryon.
Well, thanks. It's sort of a non-traditional story for sure. You know, it's I say almost embarrassing to watch it. The beard was nothing I had ever had before, but the show said you either have to shave your head or grow a beard, and I said, well, I'll grow a beard. And then you can see the results of that in that clip there. But yeah, my pathway to the boardroom was definitely something different than what most people take. As it said there, as I say, it's a little embarrassing to admit, but especially when you're talking to a group of people getting an MBA. No formal education. I didn't grow up in a household that thought that the formal education was a part of what I needed to be successful in life. Actually, in my small town, you aspired to possibly grow up and get a job in a particular factory, maybe one factory that your parents had worked in or something, and life was going to be good from there. And that's what happened to me. I got a job at an Exide battery plant that my uncle was a manager at, and life was good. It was right after high school. Worked there, made good money, bought a house, got a camper trailer, pull behind, a bass boat, hunting dogs, and my life was off and rolling. And went to work one day, and everybody's standing outside with signs, and there was a strike. I didn't even know really what a strike was. I was like, what's this mean? They're like, well, we're going to be off work. And I thought, great, now go have fun, do different things. But then you realize that your bills are going to continue to pile up, and you're going to have to get a job. And it was the early 80s. And with no skills, no knowledge, no education, I had to take any job I could find, make sure I could pay those bills. And the only place hiring was the Holiday Inn. So I got a job literally as a dishwasher at that Holiday Inn. And that's what started my career. And I learned a lot from that. And I'll go through that today and talk about that. But before I go into the things that I really want to talk about and share, I was hoping to get an understanding of some of the folks on the call today and get a sense of what all you're doing and what you're getting your MBA for. Some of you may be getting your MBA right after your bachelor's degrees, your undergraduate degrees. Others may be pursuing a life in academia. Others may be mid-career. And I was hoping maybe a few of you would just unmute and just kind of tell me what exactly are you doing and what you're planning on doing with your MBA. What is your purpose for getting this advanced degree? Anybody can share. I'll start calling on people.
Jump in, Bryon. So I have a background in healthcare, so 4 years of healthcare experience. I'm getting an MBA just because I recognized that there were problems that I wanted to fix, and I had no idea how to fix them, and it was frustrating me to be stuck in these roles where people are just telling me, well, just wait your time, and I wanted to learn more, and I wanted to learn how to serve people in a greater caliber. So I'm here to learn the skill I need to make the big decisions and also to be a better servant leader.
Great, Ryan, thank you for that. Anybody else?
Maybe some of my MS business students too. Ryan, no, please, Ryan Short, please go ahead.
I just want to say about the other one of the other many Ryans in the first year group. My name is Ryan Short. I've had 2 years bachelor's in petroleum engineering and 2 years in the field. I'm getting my MBA mainly because it kind of gives me the versatility I think I need to be a professional, whether I want to stay in oil and gas industry and maybe in the future start my own oil company if that still seems viable, or have the ability to just transition myself elsewhere in another industry and really kind of take hold of whether in a leadership position. So
Very good. Bryon, thank you. Anybody else? How about for some of you, are you doing this mid-career, or is this something you've pursued right after college? Show of hands, mid-career? That'll make it easier. Okay. And right after college must be the others. Okay, very good. Well, appreciate that. You know, I ask that because as I've gone through my career, I've had an opportunity to work with a lot of people who did get their MBA, and they came in with expectations of the impact they were going to have on our organization. And one of the things that I've always been able to find was that the real impact everybody wants to have is they want to find ways of mobilizing people to achieve a desired outcome. That's what I found out early on, which was all of management was about, is just being able to take skills to mobilize people to get those desired results. And that was something that I did pretty inherently. So I'll go back to my early days at the Holiday Inn. So I remember lamenting to my father before I left for work the first day. I said to him, I said, I can't believe I'm going to be a dishwasher at a Holiday Inn. And he, in all of his wisdom, said, no, you know, he says, taught you better than that. There's no honor in what you do for a living. Honor comes from how you do it. And he said, I suggest that you go be the best dishwasher they've ever seen and see where that takes you. Well, there's not really any place to start much lower in a Holiday Inn than being the dishwasher. So I went there, and I have to tell you, what I walked into the first day was just a mess. If you've ever worked in the restaurant business as you're going through school, maybe you worked as a server or anything, a big busy restaurant, it's just controlled chaos. And people are yapping at everybody. The cooks are yelling at the waitresses and the servers are yelling back at the cooks. The dishwashers are getting nothing but the garbage to take care of. It's just a complete mess. And that's what I walked into. And I thought, I don't know if I'm going to survive this. This is absolute craziness. And so instead of living in the craziness, I noticed that after work each day, everybody got together and went out. They'd go out and have drinks and have fun and stay out till 3 o'clock in the morning. And it seemed that when they went out, they all got along very well. Next day, they go back to work and same thing. They're harping at each other, and it's just a mess. And so, not liking to live in chaos, I decided, why don't we have a powwow when we're all out that evening chatting as friends? Why don't we talk about how we could make improvements so our lives would be better while we're there at work? And lo and behold, within about a week's time, the restaurant was running significantly better. We were operating as a unit, as a business unit, and things were going much better. Well, it's about that time that the owner of that Holiday Inn came up to me and he said, you're not like any dishwasher I've ever had. And I, being so young and brash, I started thumping my chest and said, you're right. I'm not like any dishwasher you've ever had. Not smart enough to know that's not how you talk to somebody like him. But, he just shook his head, smiled, and walked off. A few days later, he came back and offered me a job in management. And it changed my life. As I said in the little clip, I didn't know what franchising was before I started working there. And I didn't ever have a plan to put my career in the restaurant industry. Restaurant industry was where you did a gig or you had a job while you were actually working on getting a better job. But ultimately, it started a love affair for that industry that took me a lot of different places. During that process, during that time, I was given many opportunities to lead different stores, different hotel properties, different companies. Each time I was go to those places, the same thing happened. We took what was possibly not a great situation and we turned it into a good situation. As I said, we mobilized people to achieve a desired outcome. And I became known for being a turnaround specialist and doing things to be able to turn a restaurant around. Ultimately, I got an opportunity to become a multi-unit operator and have my experience be able to go across multiple units as opposed to single. And so at a certain point in time, I had the opportunity to get my first job where I was going to be in a company as a C-suite executive. A&W Restaurants hired me. And I have to say I was very nervous because I was very familiar with being in the operations at the store level, in the units, being able to make it happen. I was a technician, if you will, and I knew how to be a great technician. I knew how to mobilize those people and those teams. But remember, I'm the guy without the education. I'm now working in the C-suite. And so I'm walking into this company and everybody there's got their degrees and everybody's smart and everybody's been there a while. And got to be honest, I was a little intimidated. I've always said I operate off of insecurity and hyper competitiveness are my two core traits. So I was a bit insecure. And what I walked into at this company, A&W Restaurants, is a company that had been 1,700 stores. Imagine that. 1,700 stores, and they were now down to 300. Over the course of about 20 years, they became almost irrelevant, and they had fallen on hard times for decades. And so the mood and the attitude at a company like that, you can well imagine, is not great. Now, I wasn't even smart enough to realize that that's probably a career-ending position when you go to a company that's on that kind of a downtrend. I went there to make a difference. And what I found was people were interested in asking questions about where'd you get your degree, what tennis club do you belong to, what country club do you belong to, all these kinds of things. Those were important factors, and I didn't have any of that. I just wanted to make a difference. And so it was really interesting that I found myself overwhelmed. I didn't have the skills, I didn't believe, to make a difference because I was a low man on the totem pole. I was the guy without the degree and all these things. And I was working in this corporate boardroom environment. And all these people would be same as they were in the restaurant when I started at the Holiday Inn. It was chaos. Everybody was blaming everybody for all the things that were going wrong. And that for the first time in my life, I felt overmatched. And if you've got just a second here to share the screen with me, Richard, I'd like to put my PowerPoint. I got some PowerPoint stuff to put up here.
I just made you a co-host. You should be able to do it now.
Okay, let's see what happens there. Share the screen. Let's go here.
Yep.
That pull up?
Yep, we see it.
Okay. Interestingly, I cannot see it.
It may be the view that you have it on.
Yeah, well.
It's your first slide, just to let you know.
Yeah, so yeah, I can't see these slides actually on the screen this way, but let's try this view. I'm not sure why that doesn't allow me to see it, but I know the slides well. So the picture on the left is not me, I will tell you that. What this was a fortuitous meeting. So I'm lamenting the fact that I'm working at A&W Restaurants. I'm out in the field, I'm selling restaurant franchises, doing my best to do what I had to do. And I run into this gentleman, big fella, big guy, and I meet him and we shake hands, and the guy has a ring on his finger that's like the size of a Volkswagen Beetle bug. You know, that's got to be some kind of championship. As big as he was, I didn't know if he was a professional wrestler or what he was, but I asked, and he says his name's Pat Donovan, and he was a former Dallas Cowboys Super Bowl champion. I was pretty amazed by that. I was young, I was impressionable, and I asked Pat, I says, what's it like to be a Super Bowl champion? And it was interesting. Pat could have went off and told me a big story about what it was like and all the feelings that came with all that. Instead, Pat asked me a question back, and it was kind of life-changing for me. He says, well, I don't know. He says, have you ever won anything in your life that you prepared for? Did you play sports in school of any level? And I shared with him I had, and I told him that I played on a 7th grade football team that was pretty successful. And he then said to me, he says, well, everything you learned in 7th grade football is what it's like to be a Super Bowl champion. Only the party's bigger. And I didn't really know what he meant by that, but I just kept inquiring. And he says, well, whatever you learned about sacrifice, about hard work, and about all the things that you had to put in to really have a successful 7th grade football career, what you learned about the feeling of winning, when you win, how you feel. He says, that's what all of us that play professional sports, that's what we became addicted to early in life when we were in grade school and high school. And we just kept playing. And he says, some of us were lucky enough to have the size and the capabilities to take that further in our careers and play professional sports. But he says the same feeling becomes that addiction. You become addicted to winning, the addiction to practicing, the addiction to setting a goal and achieving that goal. And he says, that's exactly what it feels like. And he said, so, and I was telling him about my problems at A&W restaurants. And I said, well, it's interesting. I said, I'm up against all these different issues right here. And I've been looking for ways to really challenge myself to help this company turn around. And I said, and I felt overmatched. And so we had dialogue around all the things that I did learn. And so what I'm going to share with you today were the things that I learned in 7th grade football that ultimately became the cornerstone of my entire career. And I owe that, like I say, to Pat for helping point that out to me. Let's see here if we have the ability to advance that slide. Okay, it is going to advance. Let's go back. So the first thing I want to talk to you guys today about is you're going to learn a lot of things in your MBA program. You're really seeking knowledge, advanced knowledge, whether that's going to be in strategy, whether it's in human resources, marketing, business analytics. Those are all the core coursework that you're going to take and you're going to learn about to make you more effective. What I'm going to point out here are 4 elements that I learned that's really been able to be the guideposts for me. The glue that puts any organization together, remember I talked about, is that when you want to really help an organization move forward, you're mobilizing people to achieve a specific and desired result. And the glue that does all that starts with trust and respect. Get that first and foremost, because it is a people industry. Anything you're doing, and I don't care if this is in business, if it's in a nonprofit, I don't care if it's with your church, if it's just running a celebrity or a charity golf outing, you're trying to mobilize a group of people to achieve a desired result. These are the steps that I find to be the most advantageous. It starts with trust and respect. And I put up there, trust God as all results flow through him. That's personal to me. In the 7th grade, that's the year that I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior. It just so happens to also coincide with my 7th grade football team that I was learning all these other skills. And so I put that trust as my universal source of trust. We also learned that you have to trust those in authority. You have to trust up in life. Trust people in authority. Now, we learned that early on because our coaches sat us down and we took a bunch of ragtag kids that had never been in organized sports before. And all of a sudden, they told us, they said, you're going to think we're trying to kill you at times. We're going to run you. We're going to have calisthenics. We're going to put you through things. And you're going to have to trust that we're doing this for your best intentions. It's going to be the same in your business life. You're going to have to trust up. There's going to be decisions being made in organizations that sometimes you may not be completely aligned with, but you got to trust. You got to trust those systems that are in place there. For us, it was trusting our parents, our coaches, our teachers, and in life later, it was trusting in bosses and those types of things. You have to trust laterally. We had to learn to trust one another. The person on each side of you in that game, you had to trust that they were going to be there. They were doing their job. And so we trusted in one another, and trust is one of those things that's hard to do. It comes with experience of knowing you can count on that person to do their job. And so that's critically important. In business or in these nonprofits, you got to begin to trust people, other departments and other vital groups. You got to build trust with vendors that are going to be important to your business. And you got to give that mutual respect. You got to be able to have trust that ends up being respect for one another. So it's important to put that together. And the other element is we learn to trust the support roles. So often we think of the support roles, or we don't even think of them. It was important to us because we had the people that were non-athletes, the people that were there and making sure that we had the Gatorade and the tape and all those things. The person that was doing the lines on the field, getting the field ready. The drivers will never forget that. And I think it's why I say thank you to every Southwest Airlines pilot when I'm getting off. I thank them when I'm getting off, because we were required to say thank you for the drivers taking us to every game we went to that year. This was the first year that is seventh grade that we got to travel on buses. We weren't traveling with our parents. We were actually traveling as a group to these places. And so we said thank you to all those people. And they were there involved in all of our meetings. And we learned that at the core of everything we were doing was trust and respect for one another, for the coaches, and for everybody that made that unit run well. We also learned that the core of all of this is you. Because for any of that chain to stay intact, you have to be trustworthy and you have to be respectful of others to get the respect you're looking for. So step one, core element one, trust and respect is critically important, is what we learned. Next, we learned what engagement was. Now, I love this little cartoon I saw a number of years ago. It's probably a little unclear on this quality of trying to zoom videos, but this is a story of the pig and the chicken having a conversation about opening a breakfast restaurant, where the chicken goes to the pig and says, I think we need to open a breakfast restaurant. And the pig says, what will we call it? And the chicken says, ham and eggs. And the pig says, yeah, I don't know about that. He's like, you're going to be involved, but I'm going to be committed. And that's what commitment really is, what engagement really is. Now, many of you may know, if you've been in business at all, you talk about human resources. Now go out, there's whole companies dedicated to measuring engagement. We go out and we try to measure workforce engagement all the time, because we know that the level of engagement, the higher the score in engagement, the higher productivity we have in an organization. But it's interesting that with all the management, all the leadership, all the things out there, what we find today is that 70% of people self-identify, and think about that for a second. They self-identify as being either passively or actively disengaged. That means all the productivity is from the 30% of the people that are engaged, and 70% of the people are passively or actively disengaged. That's amazing. And with all the training we have on leadership and coaching and mentoring and management, those metrics, those numbers haven't moved much in the last decade. And so as business leaders, our job, once again, is to make sure that we get full-on engagement with people. Now, in coaching in the seventh grade, we realized what that meant. We knew we had to be committed. Our coaches were talking to us about the practice ethic, the work ethic, making sure we're never giving up, making sure we're overcoming challenges, going through the pain, if you will. We had to be committed, not just involved. In business, I like to talk about it as being fully bought in and invested, because nobody's as committed, it seems like, nobody's as fully engaged in business as an owner. And if you're ever an owner of a business, you'll know what I mean, because you'll find that you feel like nobody cares like I do. And so it's important to know that engagement is a number two measure. So we start out with trust. Trust leads to high levels of engagement, because without trust, you won't have high levels of engagement, but you have to really work hard to achieve high levels of engagement, that full committedness. I talk about it being discretionary effort. I've given this speech to some high school kids in sports. And I use an example. I says, your father asked you to help him clean the garage on Saturday. What's your level of engagement to that, right? You're probably thinking, oh, is there any way I can get out of this? I'm not going to do this. And there's just no level of engagement. People just dread it. And that's the way some people come to work. And I said, but what if your dad says to you, if you help me clean out the garage this weekend, we'll go down and get that car you've been looking at. Well, your level of engagement goes up precipitously. The reward for that goes up, and all of a sudden you have this newfound energy. You might even beat your dad down there to work on that. And kids shake their head, yes, they understand what I'm talking about there. And so as business leaders, our job is to make sure that our system is set up, that what we've done is we're getting engagement. to the level where our discretionary effort, the passion we put into something is there to go with that trust that we built on the first level. The next piece of this is alignment. Now, if you can look at the picture at the top right, you can see that's what I walked into when I was at A&W. It wasn't that we didn't have people that they trusted one another. They'd been working with each other for a while. They just weren't having any success. And what they had was a tug of war going on. They weren't all rowing in the same direction. There was no alignment around what needed to be done. And so we learned about alignment in 7th grade football. We learned that we had to be fully aligned. We had a playbook. We knew that if everybody reacted on one or two, everybody did their job. And that's an important function in this, because many times everybody's got their eyes focused on other people's roles in a company. They're always looking at what's not happening elsewhere. And as I said, there was a lot of finger pointing at A&W. The company had gone from 1,700 stores to 300 stores. You can imagine there's a lot of blame going around. They weren't really focused on being aligned. They didn't have high levels of engagement for the things that meant difference. And so what we needed to do was focus on the deliverable. And so it was important, and we learned that in our 7th grade football team. We knew that everybody had to do their job, play their role up and down the ladder. The coaches did their job. We talked about that circle of trust. Everybody was aligned. Everybody knew what everybody else was going to do on every play. In alignment comes an element. You find a lot about this in business: personal accountability. You know, you really can't be accountable for something unless you're fully got alignment, know what it is you're responsible for. So as you put together an organization, if you're human resources, you're a leader of a department or an entire company, making sure that you've got full on alignment where everybody's role is mapped to the results of the company is going to be critically important, because then you can practice personal and organizational accountability. I also talk about living in the now. And what does that mean? So there's a lot of body of work about now and, you know, these types of things of living in the present moment. What it was for us, what we had to realize and what we had to do was we had to put the last play behind us. And that's the way it is in business too. You can't lament the things that didn't go wrong or right on the last play, right? In business, you're going to have things go bad. If you focus just on the things that have gone bad, you're not going to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of you. Likewise, if you're always actually celebrating the last good play, you're not focused on the next play, and you can over celebrate and not focus on the next play, and you can have bad things happen there. So always be present, always be in the now. There's a volatile world we live in business, and we've got to make sure we're taking in all the information. There's a concept in business, I don't know if you've all heard of it. It's called VUCA, came out of military. VUCA is an acronym that stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. The business world has become much like the world in military. Military put this together when they started talking about the battlefield and what they find in the world of battlefield and preparedness. And so in business, we can take a page out of that and understand that the world is volatile in business. There is uncertainty. Path of change happens more rapidly than ever. We now know there are concepts called disruptors. We know we don't want to fall prey to disruptive technology and disruptor industries. We want to be disruptors. We know there's a lot of uncertainty, as I said, there's complexity, and so we have to be prepared for that. Living in the now helps us do that. We can continually be in an assessment mode. Assess, innovate, and overcome are the three things that we're always talking about there. We also know that in alignment, we're always helping out. We're always encouraging. We're never blaming. We learn to operate as a cohesive unit, and alignment is all about that. And no silos. I don't know if you've ever worked in an organization, but when you work in an organization, sometimes they'll talk about there's just silos everywhere, even use the word fiefdoms. You know, everybody's juggling for power. Everybody's seeking power inside of an organization. And it's funny, every time that they're doing that, it seems that's only happening in companies that aren't running well. It's just amazing to me when you get to a company that's not running well and you can see the struggle for power, the lack of alignment that exists. And so I'll move to the next phase of this, because once you have trust, you have high levels of engagement to the levels of commitment, and now you've got an alignment. It's important to have the concept of membership. You're all members of a certain university, the MBA coursework at a certain university. That comes with a certain level of exclusivity. There's prestige that comes with that. There's prestige, there's pride. There's an element of history, and it creates an element of culture that comes with that. You're going to experience things in a certain way as those who come before you and those who follow in your footsteps will be experiencing that in a similar way. The other thing that membership does is it comes with its benefits. It comes with a legacy, and it allows you to leave a legacy. And it's critically important. You think about any organization out there, organizations today have found that you have to be more than just about profit. Everybody's talking about how do we become a great organization that's dynamic, that people want to work for. And you hear the word purpose all the time. For us, as Lincoln Rail Splitters, 7th grade football, we were able to understand, because our coaches said to us, they said, there's only one team picture that's going to hang on the wall of this school. They said, it's going to be you guys. It's going to be the class of 1971 7th grade football, and it's going to have your record underneath. And that's going to be your legacy. And whatever happens this year, that's who you guys are going to be. Nobody else gets to claim that. And so being a member of that team meant something big to us. We trusted in each other. All these things work together. And just as it is in any organization that I've been with, we talk about the exclusive nature of who we are and what we're going to do. And so as it turns out, membership becomes critically important to making people feel cohesive. They have to feel involved in a spirit of being involved in something that's bigger than themselves. That's what gives us purpose. And so clearly, if you've been following along, you can see that trust, engagement, and alignment and membership are the core essence of what create a team. Now, it's interesting. I've been giving this speech for a while, and I just saw something the other day where Simon Sinek just came out and he said, a team is not a collection or a group of people who work together. A team is a group of people who trust each other. So I say, well, I was a little bit ahead of Simon Sinek, which is probably the only time in my life I can make that claim. Michael Jordan said, talent wins games, but teams win championships. And it's important to know that as you want to do something big, there's an old African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together. And as you are taking your degree and you're learning, you're teaching, all the things that you're putting together in these advanced degrees, and you're applying it in whatever it is you're going to apply this to, knowing that your ability to mobilize people, knowing that you put together a team environment, that's what's going to take you far. That's what's going to really help you achieve a lot. Now, people always ask me, were you guys successful in that 7th grade football? And I said, yes, we were. We had set a goal. I learned about goals that year as well. We set a goal. We had a mission to be the city and county champions. This was the first time you play against people from other schools around the county and not just the city. And we ended up winning, and we were the city and county champions. Not only were we the city and county champions, we were undefeated in our play that year, a record that nobody else had ever been before us, and nobody had ever been again undefeated. But it wasn't just that we were city county champions and that we were undefeated, we were unscored on. Not one point was scored against us in 9 games that season. And so that's a record that still stands. It's pretty incredible. Now, everybody always says, well, you guys might have just gotten lucky. You might have been just a bunch of kids that were destined for college sports and you just gelled all together. Well, the fact is, none of us went on to play college sports. None of us at all. We were just a bunch of kids that bought into a system. We bought in, we trusted one another, we were fully engaged, we were aligned, and we were a member of an exclusive group. Now, here's the other thing I learned from those coaches is that the next year we had the same coach in our 8th grade year. And we learned, and he told us, he says, you know, there's only one thing harder than winning and becoming a champion, and that's staying on top once you are a champion. He says, because sometimes people just had a bad year the year before, and maybe you got lucky and beat them. Other times you have to realize that once you're a champion, everybody's gunning for you. And so if you want to be champions the second year around, it takes double the effort. Imagine that. We thought we had given all we could. And so our 8th grade football year, that year, we went on to be city and county champions again. We were undefeated again. Unfortunately, we did have points scored against us. One team got lucky enough to score 6 points, and that was it. And so I will tell you that as I went through my career, one of the things I'm most proud of is that once we got on top in an organization, and these are the formulas I will tell you that I've led with my entire career, because I sat down and I crafted all this after having that fortuitous meeting with Pat Donovan. And this became what the pathway was. When I got back to A&W, I sat down with the group and I started talking about how we needed this type of a platform. A&W Restaurants went from being a 300 store brand. Remember, it had been 1,700, fallen down to 300. In my tenure there, from 1992 to the year 2000, we went from 300 stores to 1,100 stores. We completely changed what we were doing because everybody bought into the system and we believed. We ultimately were acquired by Tricon Restaurants, which was KFC, Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell, because of what we talked about in that clip of the co-branding. And we ended up growing, continually to grow those, but we were opening as many as 500 restaurants a year under my watch. And so I had the golden opportunity to go from the dishwasher to being in management to being the head of franchising for the world's largest restaurant organization in about a 12-year period of time. And that simple formula, trust, engagement, alignment, and membership, was the formula we used all those times. And so it's been a great career, great opportunity. I had the opportunity to take that to Marco's. You saw the clip. We got to have the opportunity to be on the Undercover Boss. When I got to Marco's, we were just over 100 stores strong. When I left, we were just under 900. We went from being $50 million in sales to $650 million in sales. And then once again, that formula is what carried us all that way. We not only, like I said, I'm most proud of staying on top. We became the fastest growing franchise, but we were the fastest growing franchise 5 years running. We were named America's favorite pizza company, and we won the most prestigious award in the industry by having the Golden Chain Award results bestowed upon us. And I had the embarrassing opportunity to go on TV and be on the Undercover Boss, whereby my brother tells me, he says, I always said you had a face for radio. So there you have it. That's the career path. Now, fast forward into today. You know, Richard talked about our company today, PGP, Pivotal Growth Partners. We started Pivotal Growth Partners so that we could take our platform, our little formula, and help other companies grow. And I will tell you that this has been a challenging year. Most of you probably, have experienced some challenges of your own because of COVID. Things have been different. And for us, it's been an amazing year because we've got more clients now than we had at the beginning of the year. And I'm happy to say that every client working with Pivotal Growth Partners this year is actually not just surviving, they're thriving. Our sales are up. And we had to do exactly what I'm coaching and talking about here. We had to reinvent ourselves. We had to take a look at what we were doing in organizations and find new ways of doing business. We had to challenge ourselves in full engagement, full alignment, We had to mobilize and do things differently. And so all the time you're challenging yourself and thinking of those kinds of ways. And that is the way for you to be successful as you go out in your career and apply all the skills and disciplines you're learning through this program. So I'm going to stop talking for a minute and I'm going to open it up to questions. I'd like to hear your questions, and we'll see if we can't make sense of some of the answers.
Bryon, maybe we can just stop sharing so that everyone can see each other. That was amazing, Bryon. As I promised everyone they were going to get an MBA masterclass, you certainly delivered, my friend.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've got some questions here. That's great. Ryan Staples asks, how can managers recognize and develop non-traditional talent?
Yeah, well, I think that systems and structure is critically important in that. You know, as I said before, getting results is what it's all about. When I talk about mobilizing a group to be able to achieve desired outcomes, inside of that, there's always going to be people who are really standout performers. And they're going to come from all walks and every area of a company. And I think that every person in leadership should be looking to help develop people and then rewarding. I'm big on feedback and giving focused recognition. So always looking for the people who are the role players who are doing the things that are special. And in rewarding those people. As you reward talent and reward people and give recognition, you're going to start to see people come up. And I think that's one of the most key ways, is being able to find people who are next year's leaders and next generation's leaders. Hope that helps.
Excellent. Michelle Hurd, one of our former students, asks, I often hear of motivating people and coaching in different techniques. As a mid-manager, are there tools that I can use to influence motivation where the bigger corporate environment does not align with these principles?
Without a doubt. As I was just talking about, for me, looking at and making sure that you know what your departmental goals and mission is, because it's going to be different, possibly sometimes not quite aligned maybe with where the company is, or the company leadership may not even be the exact healthy organization that you want inside of your department. And so you, as a leader within a department, have to be able to find ways of motivating your people. Once again, what is the goal? What is the mission for your department, for your role, whether it's a large department or a small department? Know how you fit in, know what your role is and your department's role is inside the greater organization. And then map, I call it mapping, every single person's efforts towards achieving that goal. Feedback is critically important. Everybody needs feedback constantly. And I mean, feedback shouldn't be just something where you're doing a review annually or every quarter, or even every 6 months. For me, feedback is continual. It's about, are we on target? It's about personal accountability. Give people a chance to be accountable. Now, accountable, sometimes you think of a target on somebody's back and we think of accountability. That's not what accountability is. Accountability is allowing people to have an opportunity to shine, right? So you're setting up expectations. And you're setting up things that have to get accomplished. You're getting people assigned the roles to do those things. And then you're bringing them in and letting them present of how well they've done. And you're coaching and mentoring. What you're doing is building next generation's leaders, doing all that, giving people the opportunity to be successful, giving them the opportunity to develop new skills. And so for me, that's what that's all about. And coaching and mentoring is all part of formal feedback and recognition. Feedback and recognition are critically important in developing people, making sure they feel trusted, making sure they feel respected, making sure they're fully engaged, they're fully aligned, and they feel a part of that team, whether it's the entire organizational team or that departmental team. Don't forget, that's how you're going to get that cohesiveness, achieving what you want to achieve.
Excellent. Tai Dong asks, when you were a dish boy, you said you guys had a talk after work, then the mess got resolved. What did you do specifically to motivate them to solve this mess? And thank you.
Well, Yeah, it's interesting because everybody was unhappy with the way the place ran. And it was crazy because they'd all get together, like I said, after work, and they would all ignore the fact that they had all been just fighting with each other. So it was little things. You know, the servers never seemed to have the dishes they needed in the right areas when they needed them. And so they had to come back, or the servers didn't like the fact that the silverware was have spots on it. It wasn't completely clean. And they were the ones that had the embarrassment from the customers when they would say this fork's dirty. The cooks didn't ever seem to have the pot and pans where they needed them because they were piled up over in the dish area. Everything was just a mess. And all it was a simple conversation about how do we work together to solve this? And I made deals with people, probably because I was lazy, quite frankly. I didn't like chaos and I wanted things to be easier. So I made deals. You bring things back to me in a more orderly fashion. I'll get stuff out to you in a more orderly fashion. I'll make sure you never wait for this. You'll never have to worry about that. And we all just got together and made a deal. And literally within a week, the place was running like a top. We're all giving each other high fives. We're celebrating, and things turned around. When I went to Ponderosa Steakhouses, as an element I'd left out of this, I got hired to go to Ponderosa Steakhouses as a multi-unit. First, I signed up. I wanted to be a multi-unit operator. And I was telling everybody in training I was going to be a multi-unit operator. The human resources team came and said, you're not going to be a multi-unit operator. You're going to one individual store. I was very brash and young, as I said. And I said, just give me my store. I'll show you what I can do. And I'll be a multi-unit operator faster than anybody ever has been in this company's history. They kind of laughed. They gave me coaching and told me I needed to lower my expectations, how concerned they were of the money they spent on training me. And then I got handed a store in Gary, Indiana. This is a store that the person who hired me told me they were closing. And now all of a sudden I'm going to that store. And I asked why. And they said, I don't know. It just came down while you were in training. They said, put him in Gary, Indiana. And I think they put me there to teach me a lesson because it was a challenge store. It was an old store. They hadn't invested any money in it. And I set a goal and a mission when I went there. This is just after leaving Holiday Inns. I took the team together there and I said, my goal and mission is that we'll be the #1 steakhouse in Ponderosa this year. And they all bought in and said, yeah, we're ready to do it. And we became the #1 steakhouse of the year. It went from on the closed store list to steakhouse of the year for Ponderosa. And I was Ponderosa manager of the year. And I was promoted to multi-unit with Ponderosa within a year, the fastest anybody had ever done that. And everybody says, well, how long did it take you to turn the store around? I said, oh, about 5 days. And people joke and laugh, but it's really seriously, that's the same thing about that conversation with those people that were working in that Holiday Inn kitchen as a dishwasher. We just took those simple principles and said, we want to be winners. We want to align around what it's going to take. And we did that. And that's what it's been everywhere I've gone with that same formula. We just do the same thing over and over again. We talk about what we have to do to win, what winning looks like, and we deploy it and we hold each other accountable. We celebrate and we work hard and we achieve those kind of results.
That's a great story. Blaine, one of our MBA veterans, asks, you mentioned working with newly graduated MBAs in multiple organizations. Can you talk about what traits you have seen in those successful MBA grads versus those that might not have been as successful right off the bat?
Yeah, absolutely. So the one thing I always found when I got the opportunity to either work with or hire the folks that came out of the great MBA programs was they were the smartest people I ever got to work with. I mean, literally, I've been amazed by the talent, the knowledge, the skills, just the brain power of the folks, and a very broad base of knowledge. And a lot of them, though, had a lot of specialty stuff. So we've hired people that had an MBA degree for finance, or they came in and worked as part of strategic planning or human resources. Some have come in and maybe been a part of the legal framework within our organizations, marketing, from all different areas. But within most of them came in with a specialty around certain areas. And I think the importance is that the interconnectedness right? So a lot of times when you have people come up through an organization or they spend their time working in just finance or just accounting, there's not the interconnectedness of knowing how all the different disciplines within an organization operate together and what they have to do. I don't know if any of you have ever been exposed to a gentleman, and Richard, you and I spoke. There's a gentleman by the name of Ishak Adizes. Ishak Adizes is one of the management, leadership, business life cycle, corporate life cycle is one of his best books. And he talks about what management's role is. I talk about it as the ability to motivate and get people to move and work together to mobilize them to achieve a desired result. Ishak Adizes talks about it this way. He says that management's main role is to be effective and efficient for the short term and effective and efficient for the long term. And he breaks down his whole body of work into four main areas. There's the E role, the entrepreneur or visionary roles. There's the P roles, the producer roles. Those are the people that produce the results. There's the A role, which is the administrative or management role. And then there's the I roles, which is the integrators. And so what I found was in the MBA students, the people that come through that level of education, they were able to see the interconnectedness between the P, the A, the E, and the I. Some of them were even able to flow back and forth within those roles. And knowing what's needed at any given time in any organization to be effective and efficient for the short term and the long term is critically important. Seeing the big picture for the MBA students seemed to be easier for them to grasp than the people who were coming up through the organization and maybe hadn't had that knowledge base, that opportunity. So they knew when we needed to be more visionary and when the E role had to take on a new role. I talk about, business goes through life cycles. They come up, and they have that curve, they can flatten out. And it's important to know that the E role, the visionary, the entrepreneur, they're looking at the long term, right? So effective and efficient, they probably were the person that set up the business. Now the business is operating, it's operating under the control of the management, the administrative function, and the producers. And so now you have to be able to say, this is us 1.0. What's 2.0 look like? And so in 2.0, that visionary, and then we teach our companies today, when does the E, the entrepreneur and visionary, have to kick back in? What's it going to look like 2 years from now, 3 years from now? Quite frankly, this year, how are we going to survive in an environment like COVID? I was working with many restaurant chains that they were doing a lot of dine-in business, and they were stuck. They were done. What are we going to do? The government has just shut down our ability to be in business. Some of them, they were talking about closing. And so what we had to do is coach and teach and bring out that E role, that visionary, that entrepreneur. If we never had dining rooms, how would we act today? How would we set our business up if we were never going to be in the dining room business? And we had to reimagine ourselves. And then we have to have the producer kick in to be able to start to create that, right? And we have to go down that function. And so getting all balance of all those areas together is critically important. And I always found that the people that I worked with or hired that had that educational background and saw the holistic way of looking at business just were able to be more strategic and be able to grasp that bigger, broader picture. Sorry for being so wordy.
That's great. Well, I know we're at the 10 o'clock mark. Do you have time, Bryon, for two more quick questions?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. So Madonna asks, hi, Bryon, your story is truly inspiring and so is your charismatic personality. That was actually a statement, by the way. I would like to hear from you on significance of emotional intelligence of a leader in building a team. Would love to hear an anecdote in the above context.
Yeah. Well, if you've asked that question, that EQ is one of the biggest traits we have to be aware of. And so knowing how you are perceived with all the people around you is critically important. So we put in a lot of testing, 360-degree reviews, continual feedback. I, as a leader, wanted to have feedback from the people who are working with me and working around me all the time, because we need to know how we're being perceived. one of the things we live by is we have a conversation around, what do I do that creates a belief in you that I wouldn't want you to have? In other words, if I do something as a leader that creates a negative belief, I need to make sure I know about that, because I care enough as a leader not to continue to create those beliefs. So anecdotally, I was asking for that feedback, and many times people have trouble giving feedback up. If you're someone's boss and you ask them for feedback, you're going to get the softball stuff. They're going to say, oh, I think you're fine. I think you're great. And then they'll give you one little thing that tries to make it like they're giving you some kind of constructive feedback. But I wanted to hear the real things. And so it really was challenging to get people to open up. And I had a young man say to me one time, he said, he says, I'll give you the feedback. He says, when you don't return my phone call within 24 hours, now, why was that important? Because I had an edict that we return everybody's phone calls within 24 hours because we're a customer service organization. And he said, when you don't return my phone call within 24 hours, you make me feel like you don't care about what I do for the organization, that I'm not important enough for you to return that phone call. Now, that was not a belief, and he was correct. That was not a belief I wanted him to hold. And so what I had to do is now create new experiences for that young person to make sure that he had the belief I did want him to hold. And that is that I return phone calls within 24 hours if that's a rule that I had put out there for our organization. B, what he had to say to me and what he needed from me was critically important. And so my experiences going forward was to ensure that I never created that bad experience again. And I think, though, when you're always in a continuous flow of asking for and giving feedback, you have a gauge, you have guardrails around the EQ component. You don't tend to get too far out of whack because you're asking for it and you're doing something about it. You can't have a filter on that says, okay, I heard you, but I do nothing about it. It's important to know how you're being perceived and then reacting appropriately to create the right belief structure for people.
That was great. Shane Laurent asks, our organization is moving to a growth phase, and we understand that 100% buy-in is necessary to meet our goals. We know that not everyone will get on board. Can we expect a certain level of turnover?
Without a doubt. I will say this, when I go into most organizations and I start working with them, the first thing I say to the CEO when we're looking at those, or if I'm in a role of one of the senior leadership teams, I talk to the team there and I tell them, get comfortable with the idea that 50 to 60% of this room may not be the same people in the seats a year or 2 years from now. Growth is hard. Change is hard for people, and growth is nothing but continual change. And so people get comfortable. Growth causes fear because we're stepping into the unknown. And so it's critically important for everybody to understand that. But when you set that up like that and you let people know, what tends to happen is more and more people do make the necessary change so that they will be a part of the organization. Once again, it's about that whole team element, about membership. If you let everybody know how special it is to be a member of this team and let them know where we're going and create the compelling vision of why we need to go there, that's a critical part of change that gets people to buy in. If they don't feel like they're a part of the team, they're not trusted, they're not engaged, there's not alignment, there's not membership, you'll see that fall off happen more. And you'll have to make the tough choices to take those people and remove them out. Sometimes it's not moving them out of the entire organization. I've done a lot of lateral moves for people. I've taken people that were overplaced and put them into a position where they were better placed. And so making sure you're always understanding what people can bring to the table and getting them positioned for that's great. But there will be people who will just be, we call them the resistant resenters. They're the people that are actively disengaged. They're your brand terrorists, man. They're going to tear it down because they're just not on board. Removing them from the organization is an unfortunate part of what leadership sometimes has to do after you've given them all the opportunities. But there will be people that just won't make it.
That's great. Wow, man, this has been a powerful hour, my friend. Bryon. Yeah, so grateful for you joining us today. I know our students and the audience really. I'm very confident that they were blown away as well. I see some head shake, and yeah, I mean it was really great, good stuff, and really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you all. Good luck with your careers, with your education. My hat off to you, and appreciate you all taking time to jump on the call today. Thank you so much. Thanks, Richard.
man. We'll be in touch. I owe
Yep,
you one.
bye-bye. Yep.
Take care. Thanks, everyone.